Well, okay, so we would love to talk about your history with the college, your time with the college, but we'd also love to know a little bit about your history growing up and your education and all of that. So if we could start with that, where did you grow up, and tell us a little bit about your family life?
Yeah. I grew up in Oklahoma and on a farm and ranch, and we raised wheat and cattle and other animals. And I went to a small town school for through high school. And then I did, my first year of college was at what is now Oklahoma A&M. It was Oklahoma A&M then, it's Oklahoma State now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And did a year there. I did a year at Elmhurst University in Chicago. And came back and finished my education in Oklahoma. And then got a PhD at the University of Kentucky. And that's where I got in touch with our first dean, and had a chance to come down here when he came to spend some time with him, and which was a great thing. And we thought maybe we'd be here a couple of years, and it ended up being till today. So it's been a long time, yeah. But he's kind of the role model for all of us in this college. And he was a great person.
Well, what was your undergraduate degree in?
It was in history.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you decide to study medical sociology?
Sociology?
Yes, sir.
I knew a physician at actually chair of the Department of Internal Medicine at the University of Oklahoma, and my wife worked there for him. And I really got turned on to the whole idea of stress and disease, which was where most of his research was. So a perfect background for part of that whole idea of stress and human behavior and disease is sociology. And that got me to Kentucky, where there was a program in medical behavioral science, but specifically for me in medical sociology.
And how did you end up coming with Dr. Willard?
Well, the chair of my Department of Behavioral Science at the School of Medicine in Kentucky, said you need to work with him. He had come to Kentucky with Dr. Willard from, Yale originally. And he said, you need to spend a couple of years with him. You'll learn so much. And like I said, that a couple of years turned into many.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, could you tell us a little bit about the different, I know before you were dean, you held a couple of different positions, correct?
Yeah, I had a lot of them, it seemed.
So what were the different titles you held?
Well, other than the academic titles, those were like assistant professor, associate professor, and so on. But the first thing I was asked to do was to put together all of the materials for the Liaison Committee on Medical Education review of the college. And I don't know if you could look those up sometime in the dean's office. It's about this much paper. It's ridiculous. But you just want to look at it once. Don't ever try to work in it. So that was the first thing I did. And it was interesting because we had just gotten here not too long before this came up. And we'd first got some residents out at the VA. So when the committee came, they wanted the LSCME committee show us what you do at the VA. And they sent me out there. I'd never been there. And, this is a small town, really. But I couldn't find it. I didn't know where it was. It was very embarrassing. I hope that wasn't the reason that we had poor score the first time. But that was the first thing I had to do, the dean assigned me. And I guess as far as another major task was the development of the Department of Medical Behavioral Sciences. which is now incorporated into psychiatry. So that department, we ended up with probably about, 5 faculty members in there. But the other major assignment was I was director of medical student affairs, and I can't remember exactly how many years, but probably started sometime in the early 80s until just before the 90s, and so I did that for maybe 10 years or so, and I was also, by that time, had been promoted to associate dean, and for academic affairs, did that for a while. You know, one of the major things that I had a chance to do, where I learned a lot, was the dean asked me to put together a program. Those were in the days when the federal government funded free clinics. Put one together on the west side of town, because that's where it's a large African American community. A lot of those people are indigent as far as medicine goes. There were no physicians over there, and so we put together first a free clinic and had some of the docs in town serve there, and I guess we did that every 2 weeks, the medical students. The medical students really raised our interest in that, because in the emergency room they see these people come in with their diabetes and hypertension and so on, in real trouble with that. And they'd patch them up, send them back home, and since there's no primary care on that side of town at that time, then pretty soon they'd come back again. So the point was to put in a clinic over there. And I worked with the community on that side of town, through the churches, some educators, and we got that put together. And it's called the Maud Watley Clinic, and it's still going. In fact, I don't even know where all they have things now, but they have a book, I understand, in their waiting room that shows all of us who were involved in that early on. I need to go look at that sometime. But that was a major effort of the college, and it worked. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How long was that whole process of building the clinic and getting it up and running?
Oh, I suppose about 2 years. Yeah. Yeah, nothing like that works quickly.
Yeah.
You're working in a community where all of a sudden, if there's a chance, everybody wants a little piece of the action. Yeah. So you work largely in that community. You work through the churches, because that's where the power is in the African American community in Tuscaloosa, anyway.
And that was the first free clinic in Tuscaloosa?
Mm-hmm. It was.
So now I think they have locations in 7 counties.
You're right. Yeah, it's spread all around. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I'd love to talk a little more about that LCMU review and just the whole process of that, and kind of with the negative scores or the poor scores. What was the aftermath of that for the college, and how did that affect the college?
Yeah, that was the first review. The next one was better, and I can't remember the dates on that, but I think in Dr. Coggin's book you can find the dates. Finally, the last one was excellent. In fact, I just looked at it this morning again, and we got the top ratings all the way through. There was a back and forth with Birmingham with regard to this. They were never happy. Well, how are you going to use this?
We'll use it we'll be careful.
Okay. They didn't want us here at all. And it's, it all has to do with money. And how much is the legislature going to give you and so forth. And will there be another medical school, which they were really afraid of that. And so finally getting a good score on that kind of ease the tension between the two campuses with regard to the medicine. And from that point on, that's been very good. Also, the administration at UAB changed. And the dean, when I became dean here, the dean up there, Dr. Fallon, was very supportive. So that kind of issue changed. It goes way back with the university. I mean, I don't think it exists now, but it did at that time for a long time. This campus versus that campus, and there was all kinds of stuff. Mostly that before I came. But that's I never hear that anymore. The dean may, I don't know.
Well, you know, we're ramping up for another LCME review.
Are you?
Yeah. So starting to hear a little bit of that, but it's nothing like the way that it's what you would expect when you have a branch campus. Nothing from what I've heard historically and the way it has been in the past. So.
And the last time when we had a good review that I remember was, you've had them since then actually, but they were a bit more supportive. The very first ones they were not, and so we were lucky to get by it all.
Well, can you explain a little bit what happens when there are lower scores and what kind of challenges the college faced and how they were able to?
There are, these things change at the national level, but depending on how well you did or didn't do can affect the number of students you have. And the recruitment of faculty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so in what ways how were they able to achieve higher scores throughout the years?
Well, I think we got more support from the community physicians, and so we had more adjunct faculty in internal medicine, surgery, pediatrics, and so on. And we did some good recruiting, too, in full-time faculty. And that made a difference as well.
Well, after, you became interim dean, and I believe that was in 1991. Is that right?
No.
Or 1990?
1990. I was named dean right away after Dr. Coggins retired.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then shortly, I'm not sure how much time passed after that, could you tell us a little bit about the state funding cuts that occurred and just how that whole process kind of panned out?
Yeah, that happened particularly during my tenure. The college, and I think I wrote a little bit about that in the 40-year thing, but we were really hit hard, the university was, 2 years in a row, or 2 or 3 years in a row. And the last time we had that proration, this college got cut twice as much as the others, percentage-wise. So it was really difficult, and I guess we got through that primarily through the foundation, which we had at that time. But it limited hiring faculty and those kinds of things that you want to be doing, funding research and so
the new third-year students are here for the first time today.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah.
All 31.
That's fantastic. That's another story. We had a terrible time getting students to begin with for the first 15 years or so.
Why was that?
Well, they were told in Birmingham by the academic training. They have really good people in Birmingham, the physicians, the faculty. You don't want to go to a place like this, you're not going to get a good education. And when the head of surgery tells you that, you probably don't want to go here. So we had to overcome a lot of that over time. But my goodness, you have 31 now. That's great. That's good. Oh, yeah, we were still talking about what?
Well, and Leslie asked, why was it that this college was cut twice as much?
Yeah. I think when I dropped this, I was about to say, I think you'd have to ask Dr. Sayers that. Are you going to talk to him by any chance? Former president?
There's a few that we would like to talk to if we can. Just depends on where they are.
He probably won't remember it, maybe selectively not remember it, but the administration here had no idea how to help fund a medical school. They just simply were clueless. And that we do things differently. And also the idea, well, you have doctors there, so you must have a lot of money. You don't have a lot of money with primary care physicians. I mean, that's one of our issues still today. So they probably just thought that they can take it. And that was hard to take. I mean, our other issue here, you want to get into the DCH a little bit. The time that I became dean, they were not giving us hardly any money, and they got tons of money for the residency program. That's the way all of them work. The federal government funds these things, and they were keeping almost all of it, and it was a lot of money. Over $1 million each year. That would have made a lot of difference as the size of our college at that point. And after I'd been in office here for about a year, there was a change at DCH in the CEO, and the new one, who had been there before, was much easier to deal with, and so we got an increase there. By about twice as much as they had been giving us. Then the other thing that we did, which was kind of dicey, a small town, our auditors was a big accounting firm here, and everybody in Tuscaloosa and most of Birmingham knows who these people are. They were also on the board at DCH. Whatever they wanted to do at DCH, these guys would go along with it. And they didn't know how to really review and audit a medical school. So we fired them. Now there's some real, that's why I said it was dicey, that it's in a small town. That's a difficult thing to do because, most of the money in Tuscaloosa went to these guys as their auditors and their accountants. So I caught a lot of flack. We did as a college, but we got a group out of Tennessee, and what that accounting firm did was medical schools, and they put together the kinds of data that DCH could not refute. So by the time Dr. Curry came on as dean following me, they had raised that significantly, as it should be. They shouldn't make any money off of it. Our residents help them make money. So it's just, but we couldn't sell that for a long time. So that's kind of how we finally got it turned around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then was there other kind of internal efforts? I may have read this or may be incorrect. When it was kind of apparent that it was going to be a while. It didn't look like it was getting any better in terms of state assistance. were there strengthening of programs? Was there kind of different strategies within the college? I may be mistaken.
No. Well, one of the things we did, again, with regard to money, is we allowed our docs to spend a little more time seeing patients. It's not difficult in a big academic medical center, but one this size, with mostly primary care physicians, we're still academic, so you want them to teach, you want them to see patients, and you want them to do research. And for family practice, at least in those days, it's not true anymore. Most of the people recruited really didn't know much about doing research, and they felt that their efforts should be totally in teaching and some in patient care, but we got that increased. There were some complaints about that, as you might imagine, but they started seeing more patients, and that made a difference too.
Could you talk a little bit about the capital campaign and the efforts made by the college during that?
Yeah, we had, I think, a good committee, and we probably got maybe $250,000 outside of the $1 million that Celia Wallace gave us. It was an interesting time because most of the deans on this campus had never been involved in raising money in capital campaigns. I mean, the only one that was good at that was the College of Commerce and Business Administration. You know, that's their thing. And they already had people contribute a lot. They made their goal before the day that we opened the campaign. So I went into meetings with other deans from here at the national level. They were trying to teach us how to do this fundraising stuff. And honestly, I don't like it at all. I think that's one of the most onerous jobs that a dean has, but it's what you have to do now. So, that was it. And we had, like I said, we had a good committee. We had representatives from Huntsville, Montgomery, and of course from here, and someone from Birmingham on the committee, the fundraising committee, capital campaigns. And so I think, given the fact that we were not well known, the fact that we got, well, the $1 million was kind of unusual, but the other $250,000, I think that was actually probably pretty good for us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting about the Cecilia Wallace gift. One of my faculty members and I went down to see her at Spring Hill Hospital in Mobile, and we just got started talking to her about it. Someone on the Board of Trustees had suggested we see her. And we were in her office 10 minutes, and she said, "Look, I'm going to give you $1 million." Well, we hardly got our spiel going, you know. And she said that, and that was just fantastic. We were two of the happiest people in the world driving back from Mobile that day. So, and I guess that Dr. Blum still holds that chair, doesn't that right? Yeah.
So what do you think it was about the college that made her want to contribute, and to contribute kind of a substantial amount? Is she familiar with the college and its mission?
Her husband was a physician. She's a physical therapist, I think. I think. Mm-hmm. And whether he had trained at UAB, mm-hmm. I don't know that for sure. But what he did do was smoke a lot, and he died of lung cancer. Right. So that became a thing that was really important to her. And the money came for Spring Hill from one of his patients who had told him, he said, "Doc, you know, I don't have much cash, but I do have land. I'll just give you some land." Well, that land turned out to be a huge oil field. And that's how Spring Hill got built. And that's where her money comes from. Yeah. Citronella, a citronelle oil field. Yeah.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very And so you retired, was it 1996?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, looking back from when you started to when you retired, and what kind of growth did you see the college go through?
I think it was, we were getting solid with medical students. The numbers were good. The residency program had been good for a long time in terms of its numbers, and I think the quality of residents we get. And I see one every now and then. My wife just had a knee replacement, and so there were several residents in there with Shelley's group here. And they're good people. They're really good. So we have a great reputation. Now, I don't know that it continued. I think the best thing you could say about it is that it became solid during that period of time, and also recognized in the community. And the docs here in town, they like us. And why not? You've got residents there at all times of the day and night that you can call on. So it's that a lot of that occurred during this period of time, from 90 to 96. But it was also good to retire. Retirement's a good thing.
What's your involvement today with the college? I know you're on the board of visitors.
That's pretty much it. We get our health care here, but I mean, we wouldn't have a choice about that. But no, just I'll do anything that the dean would that he thinks I could help with. I don't like to do fundraising, but I would do it. If that could ever be helpful. Yeah.
Are there any sort of challenges that you see the college facing today?
Yeah, I think actually over the next 10 years, you're going to see the healthcare stuff out of Washington and nationally finally agree that we need to do this with primary care physicians. And I think if we just hang in tight and keep doing the great job that's being done now, we'll do well. I really think so. It's going to depend on primary care to improve the healthcare costs and taking care of, like our students first said, well, these people are getting sick on the west side of town, and we patch them up, send them back home, and they get sick again. That's what we can't let happen, and if we have enough primary care doctors, that won't happen. So your costs have to go way down, so you don't have to hospitalize everybody for everything. So I don't know if you'd call it a challenge. I guess it's a challenge, but a good one. Yeah.
Do you, medical students and residents, or for those who are thinking of coming to the college, is there anything you would say to encourage them, or just to tell them?
Well, you've got some upcoming third-year students here now. I think doing that in the second year, if you can find a little time in their basic sciences to get them down here, is a good thing. And then probably identify some physicians that they'll see in their first 2 years who know us and like us, so they can put in a good, word of mouth kind of thing. I think it's good thing to do. We used to do programs for them up there. I mean, we did everything you can possibly think of. Parties, programs, and to get them interested in us. And I don't know if those things make a lot of difference, but it made us feel better. I think that we were doing something.
Well, I do have one more question about the perception of family doctors and practicing family medicine. If I understand correctly, the perception of that wasn't the greatest, or it wasn't so, looking back, do you think that's changed?
Yeah, I do. it wasn't good. I mean, we'd hear things like the physicians at Birmingham, the faculty there, they had a derogatory name for local physicians when they'd send patients to them. This is another one from the local MD. I mean, it was worse than that, but I don't think you hear that anymore. And I think largely it's because family medicine has grown into its own real academic niche, and I think is now highly regarded, where in those days there weren't many, and they weren't highly regarded, a lot of them, even though they may have been doing a good job. Yeah, they fought this all the time.
I mean, that's sort of happening at a national level, right? Where it's
I think so,
family
yeah.
medicine, just in primary care in general, being recognized, at least in some circles.
Yeah, more and more, yeah. Yeah. I think it is national, and that's made it a lot of difference, yeah.
I wanted to ask you, when you mentioned that you helped start or develop the behavioral medicine department here at the college, that now is the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Medicine, did a lot of medical schools at that time have a department like that, or was that kind of a relatively new thing at that time?
Relatively new. There were several that I can't remember, but two of the prominent ones were the University of Kentucky and Penn State in Hershey, where the medical school, the full medical school is. They had a department of medical behavioral science in those two schools, and there were several others scattered around the country. But the reason it could try it here was because Dr. Willard helped bring it to Kentucky. The chair of the department, my chair up there, came with him to Kentucky, and they put all that together. Yeah.
And I think now they're fairly common at medical schools.
I hope so. Yeah. Yeah, we need to still teach people that stress does make a difference in your life, and that you need to ask questions about, well, when you go home from here, how far away is your bathroom?
Right.
Or your toilet outside? You know, things that make a difference in one's life, and what do you eat and what have you. Important. Yeah.
And can you talk just a little bit about Dr. Willard? Because you came here with him, or because of him, and worked with him, or knew him at Kentucky.
I'd met him at Kentucky a number of times, but my chair, Bob Strauss, said he had been with him from Yale to Syracuse to Lexington, so we're old friends. And he just wanted me to spend time working with him, as I said. And, he was a real gentle person, very kind, and was really good at listening to people. He was listening sometimes when you didn't even know it. We were in Colombia in South America, a meeting with a school there that had a lot of outreach programs. So we were in the dean's office down there, and we were around a table kind of like this. And there were 4 of us from here, counting Dr. Willard, and the dean of that school. And the dean was talking about the kinds of things they're doing out in the communities and what have you. And Dr. Willard was way back. He's a long, tall guy, and his eyes closed. And I wanted to kick him, you know. But about halfway through the other dean's comments, he sat up and he said, "Now you just said." So you should never try to think that he wasn't hearing you or listening. You may wonder sometimes, did he get anything? I said he got it all. So he was that kind of person. in all of his career, he was dean at Syracuse. He was assistant dean, I think, at Yale. And he was dean, of course, in Kentucky, and then the dean here. Of all those years, he only fired one person. And everyone I know who knew that person said that had to be done. So that was at Kentucky. Yeah. But his heart was totally into the whole idea of community medicine, public health. And that was one of the problems that he had actually with Birmingham, is that he did a residency in pediatrics, but then he did more work in public health. Yeah, his residency in peds, I think, was at Johns Hopkins.
Okay.
That's probably in some material around here someplace, but they didn't see him. He wasn't enough of a practicing physician.
Okay.
You know, he wasn't in surgery 8 hours a day and all that kind of stuff. And because that's not what he did, and that's what they do, and at that time anyway, and they frowned on that a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. He also won major awards nationally,
Okay.
which, you know, everybody else was proud of that. Birmingham was jealous at that time. Now, I hope I haven't said too much negative about Birmingham, because my relationship after I became dean was good.
Okay.
Yeah. And even with the dean that we'd had so many problems with, Jim Pittman, I don't know if he's still alive.
I don't know.
I know he was very ill anyway, but he wanted me to be dean, and so I have a final meeting with him up there, and he said, "Now, how much money do you want to make?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I've been as associate dean, I've been at the dean's council of deans here on this campus, and I really like all those people. I don't want to make more money than the dean of arts and science, at least." He said, "Well, how much do you make?" So I told him, well, he gave me 1,000 more than that. That was part of that old thing. We're UAB, we don't like U of A, and they went the other direction as well. You know, just to antagonize them. And so, you know, so.
But you still had a good relationship with him. Was that?
Well, yeah, you know, I did some of the interviewing for Will Congdon's book, and I did it. Will did not have that good a relationship with Jim Pittman, so I did the interviews with him. And he said, "You know, you're the best dean we've had." And he said, "The only thing that's wrong with you is you have a PhD behind your name instead of an MD." But that was okay.
Yeah.
And but he didn't get along that well with Will, and certainly not with Dean Willard either. So yeah, but we ended up doing okay together. Yeah.
We had Dr. Special in for an interview when he was in town.
Did you?
We talked about that relationship, and it was interesting.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he was kind of in the middle of some of that. Yeah. Yeah, he's a public health guy too, and that didn't go over too well.
Were you concerned at first about not having an MD?
Oh yeah, yeah. You look at that up there, everybody has an MD but me, and there were two other places in this country where there was an MD or a PhD dean of the School of Medicine. One was at South Alabama, the other one was the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. And those people were also either biochemists or other PhDs that, you know, where they taught medical students those other things that are important to medical students. And the reason it was possible to do it, I think, is that the faculty here, I'd help recruit all of them, and so we were in good shape together in that regard. I don't know if everybody in the community probably didn't think that was a great idea to have a PhD doing that, but it worked for 6 years anyway. Yeah.
I just want, when did you actually come to the college? And did you come with Dr. Willard, like when he came over, or did you come a little bit later?
A little bit later was probably less than a year later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So still before really things had even
Yeah.
off the ground and
I
off
think
oil.
I was the first person from out of state on the faculty, and there was one other person here, who was a biologist. That was his assistant dean when I got here. So that was it. There were just the three of us to start with. And that was in '74. Actually appointed in '73.
That must have seemed kind of like a leap of faith in a way. I mean, you left Kentucky and then came here when there was just
Yeah.
Dr. Willard and one other faculty member.
Well, yeah, and if I had my chair up there. I had all the confidence in the world about his recommendation to do 2 years with Bill Willard. And interesting thing is, I'd applied for a position at Penn State in Hershey, in the Department of Medical Behavioral Science there, because I knew the chair there. And as soon as I accepted the job here, I got a letter from them asking to be on the faculty up there. So you never know, Be eating Hershey, I guess.
What do you think has kept you here in Tuscaloosa?
Well, we were with the college for a long time. And Virginie, my wife, she worked in the School of Nursing. So, but we have a lot of friends in the community. And our children did most of their school here. And I have a grandson now at the university.
Really?
His first year, yeah. So we're it's this home. Oklahoma we go to every now and then. I have family there, and both of us do. But this is home, yeah.
And where in Oklahoma did you grow up?
North of Oklahoma City, about 50 miles. A little town. It was Marshall, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Yeah. And we raised Herefords, in case you need to know what kind of animals we had.
Oh, okay.
Not Angus, but Herefords.
Yeah.
The white-faced ones, We actually had chickens and hogs, too.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
But you didn't want to go into farming.
I liked it, and there's nothing better than being on a tractor and plowing a field after you've cut the wheat and all that stuff. When that earth turns over, that fresh earth, that is smelled so good.
Mm-hmm.
But I really had allergies to wheat dust and stuff, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I even ran a fever when we were harvesting. Yeah. That doesn't mean I would have done it anyway, but
Did you have a big family, lots of brothers and sisters, or?
I have a sister who is 96.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And a brother who is 71.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's it. And Virginie has 2 brothers and a sister.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have nieces and nephews out there too. So
Mm-hmm.
they're either, most of them are lawyers. I mean, really, a lot of them are lawyers. A couple of them are veterinarians, but
That could come in handy.
yeah, good.